The first Noel, the angels say, were to certain poor shepherds in fields where they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. Hark the herald angel sings, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful, all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark, the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bearing near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men. From heaven's all gracious King, the world in solemn stillness by, to hear the angels sing. Welcome back to My Seminary Life. I'm your host, Brandon Knight, and today we are continuing our journey through the birth of Jesus, guided by our favorite Christmas hymns. And today, our guide, our Christmas hymns, we got 3 today, breaking a little bit of the A-side, B-side feature I've been doing here on the show the past couple episodes. Think of this as a bonus track. I got a bonus track for you all today. But our hymns this week are The First Noel, Hark the Herald Angel Sings, and It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. The passage in question is, of course, the most famous passage, arguably the most famous passage out of the Christmas story, and that is out of Luke 2, when the angels appear to the shepherds to announce the birth of Jesus, announce the birth of the Messiah. And this was the week, by way of Christmas hymns, that it was the easiest and the hardest week for me to pick out what hymns what I was going to use in my sermon and what I was going to talk about here on the podcast. The reason why it was the easiest is because, as I kind of alluded to there, due to the popularity of this passage, there are a lot of songs that talk about this part. There's a lot of hymns about this moment when the angels appear to the shepherds, either songs that focus on it entirely, like Angels We Have Heard on High, or even just like Christmas songs where that is a part of the song, like Go Tell It on the Mountains got a line in there about while shepherds kept their watch over silent flocks by night, or something like that. So this is a very popular section, and there's plenty of songs to choose from, so that made it really easy. The reason why it was difficult to pick a hymn this week is because, well, there are too many options. There are too many songs. There are very obvious ones like What Child Is This, or the previously mentioned Angels We Have Heard on High that, we're not even going to get to. There are so many songs that talk about this part, and that's saying something given the entire canon of Christmas music and Christmas hymns. There are little to know, from what I can tell, there are little to no hymns about Mary and Joseph wandering Bethlehem trying to find a place to stay. But there are Christian songs about Christmas shoes, Tennessee Christmas, My Grown-Up Christmas List, Where is the Line to See Jesus? Is he here at the mall? Get me a peppermint latte, give me a word that will rock me. Like, those are all real Christmas Christian songs. And that's not even to get into the entire, canon of, holiday cheer songs, Winter Wonderland, Frosty the Snowman, Silver Bells, all of that kind of stuff. Like, there are just so many Christmas songs, and there are so many songs about this part that trying to narrow it down to what song captures what I want to talk about this week the best. And then for here, the question then became, and what am I going to allow? So I went ahead and broke tradition a little bit, like I said, and I went with 3 this week. The hymn for the sermon was The First Noel. And then here we're also adding in Hark the Herald Angels Sings, and It Came Upon at Midnight Clear. Question is why? Well, I can tell you this. The reason why for the sermon this hymn was The First Noel is partially due to the fact that we had already sung in a prior week, Hark the Herald Angel Sings. You can make an argument. Actually, I don't even think it's really an argument. Hark the Herald Angel Sings may very well be the most biblical, theologically accurate Christmas hymn ever written. There's one other hymn that I would put in contention to that as arguably the greatest Christmas hymn ever. That one is still to come, folks. But Hark the Herald Angel Sings is one of the, if not the most biblically based Christmas hymns that we have. So the fact that we had already sang it, I was like, okay, well, I don't need to do it for the hymn for the sermon, but I'll do it on the podcast because it is so rich, biblically speaking. It is a very rich hymn. Plus, we've already talked about Charles Wesley's other well-known hit, Come Thou Long Expected Jesus, which, by the way, when it comes to Charles Wesley, I made the joke last time in that episode about how Charles Wesley is kind of like the proto youth group kid who goes on a missions trip to proclaim the gospel and then gets saved. Fun fact, Charles Wesley was also a homeschooler. So we're just kind of continuing to feed this, like, Charles Wesley is the proto, like, American Christian kid. Anyway, plus, finally, the last reason why we're going to make sure that I take time to talk about Hark the Herald Angel Sings today is because it's my wife's favorite Christmas hymn. I am contractually obligated to talk about it. So that's how we get Hark the Herald Angel Sings. As for the First Noel, part of the decision to go with the First Noel for the sermon is because of that word Noel. This word Noel is a French word that means Christmas. So we can think of this hymn as called the First Christmas, which is sometimes used in a very, cheesy kind of way, and depending on your church background. But it is true that the birth of Jesus marks the beginning of a new era. And for all of you church calendar people, that era lasts a whole 12 days. But I love that. I love how short Christmas time is, and then regular time, Pentecost, Trinity, whatever, depending on where you're from. Like, that is such a long period of time. This is so much time devoted to regular time. Anyway, but the birth of Jesus, the birth of the Messiah, marks the beginning of the first Christmas. A new era has begun, and that is continued to be reinforced when you go back another step. So Noel is an old French word that means Christmas. When you go back to the Latin that this word is based on, that word means birthday. So this is the first birthday. This is a song about the first birthday of a new era, of the first birthday of the Messiah, the birth of the one that Israel has been longing for. So you see a lot just within the title of this hymn, this like reiteration of new beginning, of new life, all these kinds of things. And I really wanted to highlight that and kind of use this birthday motif a little bit when I got to the sermon. Finally, then, there's our bonus track for today's episode. It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. I would categorize It Came Upon a Midnight Clear as a top shelf Christmas hymn. And what I mean by top shelf Christmas hymn is like there's Christmas hymns where we all know the words, we don't even need to look at the hymnal. Hark the Herald Angels Sing is a pretty good example of you know the words. Away in the Manger, O Little Town of Bethlehem, Silent Night, Holy Night. Like some of these we just kind of like know really well. Now, I opened this episode with me doing my little reading, I hate to call it a spoken word because clearly I'm not very good at that, but my reading of the first verse from that hymn. Pop quiz. How does that song go? Go ahead. Without going back or without looking up the lyrics, go ahead. Take a moment. Start singing it. I'll wait. Yeah, you can't. You can't, and neither can I. It came upon a midnight clear in that glorious town of old where angels... something. Peace on the earth, goodwill to man. Like that, I don't even know, and I just read it. That's what I mean by top shelf Christmas hymn. Plus, it's kind of like it's very artsy. You know, there's like top shelfness of that as well as it being very artsy. Oh Holy Night is another one that I would consider, though I think people are a little bit more familiar with the lyrics to that one. I would also consider that to be a top shelf Christmas hymn. By the way, before I transition to recapping the sermon itself, did you know that there are 6 verses to the first Noel? I dare you, go ahead, start singing verse 5. Go ahead. Again, you don't know it. We all are pretty familiar with that first verse and what is actually verse number 6, maybe even verse 2, but those middle ones? No, none of us know it. No one has ever sung it. I probably shouldn't say no one has ever sung it, but more than likely, most people do not sing those when they are recording it for their albums. Okay, let's get into the passage now before we dive into a little bit of the history behind each one of these hymns. So at the end of Luke chapter 2, verse 7, we see that Jesus is snugly wrapped and lying in a manger. Verse 8, we are whiplashed out to a field somewhere with some shepherds, and it's nighttime now. It is very specifically stated that it was night, which to me would indicate that Jesus was born during the day. And now time has passed, is the evening, shepherds are watching their sheep, when boom, angel of the Lord. Boom, radiance of the Lord shining around him. And the shepherds were what? That's right, sore afraid. Because we all, thanks to Linus, we are all very familiar with the King James translation. It's not even from church. It's because of Linus in Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown, that we all know this passage so well. Again, you can make the argument that this is the most well-known, most beloved part of the Christmas story. Not the actual birth of the Messiah, let that sink in for a moment, but the part when the angels show up to the shepherds. So the angel of the Lord appears to the shepherds, and they freak out. And I talked about how we've heard this passage so many times, either in sermons or from Linus, and we just kind of fill in the gaps and keep going, kind of thing. Plus, we also know from the Old Testament, especially, that when angels show up, people freak out. Like there is just something about the presence of an angel that is overwhelming. But I told everyone we're going to slow down a little bit here. Okay, we're going to slow down and we're just going to think about this for a moment. When it is nighttime and you hear a noise that is outside of the ordinary, you freak out. You get terrified. Any little rustle against the side of the house or creak that is outside of the ordinary, you know it's just the wind, but you also are pretty sure the purge is about ready to happen. Like there's and I did not say the purge though. Let me be clear about that. Nobody would have gotten that reference. I said a monster is at your door or something, or under your bed or something. But we get so terrified over the smallest of noises that are kind of outside of the ordinary when we are what at night especially. And now just imagine you're just kind of like chilling at home doing whatever it is you do in the evening, and then boom, angel of the Lord, boom, radiance of the Lord shining around him. Yeah, that is pretty terrifying. That is, we are given whiplash being transitioned out into a field somewhere with some shepherds, and then the shepherds get whiplash because all of a sudden there's this angel and the radiance of the Lord. That is overwhelming. So the angel says, "Fear not, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign unto you." And this was another moment where I told everybody to kind of, let's slow down for a moment. The angel declares, "Do not be afraid." Okay, don't be afraid. I actually have good news. That will be of joy to all people, that the Messiah, the one that you have been longing for, has been born. And this is the sign that how you will find him. And that's the part that I found interesting if we actually slow down for a moment. The angel never tells them to actually go look for the Messiah, to go look for this baby. He says, "This has happened. Here's the sign." And it's not until verse 15, when everyone has left, that the shepherds make the decision for themselves to go find this. They are told of the announcement of the birth of the Messiah. They are given a sign to seek that Messiah. Because remember, with the census going on, there's a good chance that even sleepy little old Bethlehem is really busy right now. Who knows? Maybe other babies were born in town that night. But a baby lying in the feeding trough, wrapped up all snugly with mom and dad just kind of surveying over him to make sure everything is okay, that you might be able to find a little bit better than the Messiah has been born. Go to Bethlehem. The Messiah has been born. He's in Bethlehem. Like there's just kind of like this broadness to it versus the Messiah has been born. You will find him in a manger. And in verse 15, they decide, okay, we're going to go find this thing. We're going to go find the Messiah. After the sign has been given to the shepherds, then the choir of angel armies shows up, and that's when we get the famous "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace with whom the Lord has found favor," right? And, take a moment. This is a song being sung as part of the announcement of the birth of Jesus, of the birth of the Messiah, and like I talked about at the beginning of this series in Micah 5:5, that first line of verse 5, Israel is promised that this coming ruler from Bethlehem is going to be their peace, and how this is more than just national border security peace, but that this ruler himself would be peace incarnate, and that the people would find their peace in the fact that he is peace. And what is part of the song? "For unto you is born this day in the city of David, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace." This is yet another reference back to Micah 5. This other detail that they are longing for, a ruler that would bring and be peace. And then, of course, in verse 15, they go to Bethlehem, which it sounds like it's not too far away. They go to Bethlehem to go find this Messiah. So what was the punchline for this sermon? Out of Micah 5, we saw that we need to long for the Messiah as Israel longed for the Messiah. And then at the beginning of Luke chapter 2, we see that the arrival of the Messiah, we can rest in the fact that he has come, because it shows that God works in the chaos, that God can fulfill his purposes in the chaos of life. And here, in the very famous section of the birth of the Messiah, we see that the announcement of the birth of the Messiah is accompanied by praise. This is a part of the announcement. It's not just a go find it, again, doesn't even say go find him. It's not just here's the sign. Good news. Here's the sign. But there is singing involved in this announcement. And this was my time to finally kind of pull back the curtain and explain why I've been doing this, why I've been doing this whole Christmas hymn thing. I love Christmas hymns. I think, as I said there at the beginning with Hark, the Herald Angels Sing, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are so theologically rich that we lose part of our spiritual formation by not singing and meditating on these songs. But this whole series is more than just a gimmick. Like, part of our life as followers of Jesus is to sing. This is God's people. Jesus's disciples are people who sing. This birth is accompanied by praise, and so we should see that the announcement of this birth gives us the permission to sing of his birth as well. And Christmas is one of those interesting times where it doesn't matter if you're, I don't even know who's currently relevant, Zach Williams, Toby Mac, Crowder, or go back a bit, Stephen Curtis Chapman. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be, who are country people anymore? Brad Paisley. You could be, whoever. You could be whoever and sing Hark the Herald Angels Sings. You can be whoever and sing Away in a Manger, or even go more modern with Mary Did You Know? Like, this is a very interesting time where songs that very clearly communicate a message of hope, of rest, of the announcement that the Messiah has been born, everyone kind of sings them. And yes, you can chalk that all up to tradition. People are just used to singing those songs, and at a different time period it was just part of the Christmas tradition to sing the Christmas carols and hymns. But it's still interesting that these are our songs about our Savior, and everyone's singing them. Everyone's okay with singing them. And I think, without sounding again, there's moments in this episode where I'm saying things that it kind of sounds a little Christmas cheesy, but there's a little bit of we need to own those songs. We need to not take back and say, no, you can't sing our songs, but we should be the ones singing even more passionately these songs, because we understand the message that these songs are trying to communicate. We know the announcement verbatim, thanks again to Linus. We know this announcement so well, and we are invited to sing. And again, this kind of goes back to something I've talked about at this church a few times now. Of St. Francis of Assisi is quoted as saying, "Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words," meaning that your very lifestyle should be enough to communicate the gospel to other people. And people get angry about that quote and say, no, you have to share the gospel verbally. And look, where other people like to draw lines in the sand, I see them more as tools for a toolbox. Your lifestyle should reflect that the gospel has impacted you. You should use your words and tell people about the gospel. And you know what? You should also sing. You should sing the gospel. You should declare the message, the announcement of the birth of the Messiah through your singing as well. Now let's get on with the nerdy hymn talk for this, for the remainder of this episode. One of the reasons why I have enjoyed studying the history of these hymns is to really understand, where did these songs come from? We, like I just got done saying, we've been singing these songs all across the board doesn't matter where you come from. We've been singing these hymns for so long. Like, where did we get some of these? And it's so interesting because, like we saw with A Little Town of Bethlehem, or these hymns written by Charles Wesley, a lot of them are pastors, evangelists, whoever, writing songs for the church. Or, you go all the way back to that first episode with O Come, Emmanuel. It's kind of like this old Middle Ages, like, song that was brought together into it was several songs brought together into the one song that we have today. That was like part of their liturgy as they moved forward to Christmas. And then there are some, like the first Noel, we don't know. It is, as of this time, it is unknown where this song originated from. A lot of times we have these songs where it's, very clearly written for the church or by the church for, to shepherd and to guide. And then there's just others that, I don't know, they just appeared, I guess. This is the first Noel is accredited to the English, even though Noel is indeed a French word, and it is unknown. It's considered a folk hymn, and we have it now. That there's not really too much more detail out there about where the first Noel came from. This is kind of the origin of a lot of the musical arrangement parts that many of these Christmas carols have. A lot of the, again, it's kind of either this, it was music written by the church, the actual music composition that is, or it was, something that came from this like folk tradition that people who collected folk music back in the day came across and at some point attached to different songs. And that is the case basically with the whole thing for the first Noel, which is crazy, again, considering the fact that there are 6 verses to this song and we don't know where all 6 came from. It's insane. As for Hark, the Herald Angel Sings, the history behind this one is wild. Okay, well, the first Noel is wild because it's here from somewhere, some shire corner of England. It's here. We don't know how. As for Hark, the Herald Angels Sing, this song is like modern day musicians would be furious over what happened to this song, because there's a little bit of just like, well, let me just get into the story, because here's the thing. Did you know you're not singing the original version? That's right. The original version of the song went, "Hark, how all the welkins ring, glory to the King of Kings." That's how the song originally started. This was a poem written by Charles Wesley, and that's how it started. I'll read it for you again. It's not, "Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King." It's, "Hark, how all the welkin rings, glory to the King of Kings." Pretty cool. Of course, you're probably thinking to yourself, what the heck's a welkin? So a welkin is an old English word that means the vault of the sky or heavens. So, "Hark how all the heavens ring, glory to the King of Kings." Okay, it's still a pretty good, again, for a song that is about the moment when the angel of the Lord and then the choirs of the choir of heaven angel army shows up and they sing this announcement to the shepherds. Yeah, okay, that still works, right? Cool. "Hark, how all the heavens ring, glory to the King of Kings." That still works. That not bad. Why did it get changed? Well, and this is the part where the musicians listening to this, especially those who maybe have worked in the music industry before, are just gonna like shake their head and punch a candy cane here in a moment. Charles Wesley's good friend, George Whitefield, he not only took the liberty to go ahead and publish this poem as a song, he also changed the line. Without Charles Wesley signing off on it, he was just like, okay, this is a song now, and I'm changing this lyric. And again, it's a perfectly fine change. it still works. It's still, we don't have to say welkin anymore and have to like explain that every Christmas to children, what the heck a welkin is. But yeah, he just is like, all right, this is a great poem, Charles. I'm going to change it now and publish it as a song. Now, and also going a step further, the music composition is also a very interesting story, although it's not, there's not like artist infringement going on here. Mendel, let me make sure I get this guy's name right. Mendelssohn, I'm not editing any of this, by the way. Mendelssohn. That's a guy's name. One word, like Bono. Mendelssohn was a musician and music historian. He's actually the reason why we all know who Johann Sebastian Bach is. He's kind of like the guy who, way after Bach had died and like kind of fell away from everyone's memory, he was the guy who brought him back to popularity. Thank you, Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn. Is somebody keeping track how many times I've said this word differently? How I've said this guy's name differently? As a musical composer, he wrote a song in dedication to Johann Gutenberg, and the tune was the tune to Hark the Herald Angels Sing. That was eventually attached to, I don't know if George Whitefield had permission to do that, but this was eventually the tune that was attached to this song, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, as it comes from a guy who apparently really liked German people. Weird sentence. A guy who really liked Johann Sebastian Bach and also Johann Gutenberg, that he wrote an entire tune to both of them. So we have the first Noel that just spontaneously appeared here, and we now sing it. We have the artist infringement of George Whitefield upon Charles Wesley's hymn, Hark the Herald Angels Sings. Now let's get into what I would argue to be the most fascinating history of them all. The history behind It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. It came upon... I already did that bit. Sorry, I'll stop doing that. And I find this to be the most interesting story of all of the Christmas stories that I've come across in this, or history lessons that I've come across for this series. Because if you are one of those people, and you know who you are, if you are one of those people who are like, we cannot sing Hillsong, Bethel music, or elevation worship songs, listen up. Listen up for a second. Let me take you back to the year 1875. Let's go back to the year 1875 to a man named Edmund Sears. Edmund Sears was a pastor, and he wrote this Christmas hymn for his Sunday school class. And you're saying, well, Brandon, isn't that what happened with the guy who wrote O Little Town of Bethlehem? He was like a pastor who wrote this hymn for his church as well. Yeah, that's right. Sears also, he went to Union College, and Harvard Divinity School. So now you're starting to sweat a little bit. Harvard Divinity School. That's, okay. I'm still not too worried, Brandon. Why should I be worried? He was a Unitarian pastor. That's right, folks. If you like It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, guess what? You like a Unitarian song. I didn't even know they had their own songs. Like that's right. If you are one of those people who loves complaining about singing Hillsong, Bethel music, elevation worship, and you know what? You might have good points to your argument there, folks, but you need to stop with this song then. That's right. It's a Unitarian hymn. I'm not saying that we all should, okay? I like this hymn. I think there's a few more things I want to highlight here about It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, but if you are very much a person who is very concerned about the origin of where songs come from, this is a Unitarian hymn. And I want to know how you respond to that. Now, along with it being a Unitarian hymn, I guess it is worth mentioning that within the Unitarian tradition, the Unitarian is it a denomination? Is it a denomination or is it its own thing? I need to do a whole series on Unitarianism, don't I? Somebody out there is like, "Oh, yes, please do an entire series on Unitarianism. Please do that." But apparently within his tradition, he was considered a conservative. But part of the reason why he's considered a conservative is because he did preach the divinity of Jesus. Okay, which is interesting that makes you conservative in the Unitarian Church. What is going on over there? I'm sorry if any of you are actually Unitarian listening to this. I just don't know you very well. I just know that it's very open-ended at times. That's what I know about you. And apparently you wrote this hymn. Congratulations on that, by the way. So he's considered to be a conservative Unitarian, or was when he was alive. So I don't know if that helps you Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation people out at all. But yeah, this is a Unitarian Christmas hymn that was actually really loved. It actually made an impact in two different eras of history, because maybe you caught the date of when he was writing Christmas hymns. The third verse, which is often left out of hymnals, is about anti-slavery. The third verse of this Christmas hymn is very clearly an anti-slavery, anti-Civil War message. And that's usually left out of hymnals because why wouldn't we? Why not? Let's just continue to mess things up. Why not? So who uses hymn? Actually, my church uses hymnals. I'll have to check. I should check and see if they have that verse in their hymnal. That would be interesting. I knew this episode was going to be the longest one. By the way, if you're looking at the clock and wondering how much longer this is going to take, I figured this one was going to be the longer one because these are just so interesting. These three are just so interesting that I had to talk about all three of them. But yes, this was a very impactful song during the Civil War, as it being like this anti-slavery song, but it was also very popular during World War I and II. Soldiers actually really connected with some of the lyrics in this hymn. Let me see if I can find which one specifically. All these ones about crushing load, sad and lowly plains, all these ones that are about babble sounds, just all these ones that are just like really hitting the mark on just the weight of war, the depression these soldiers would have been in. This was a favorite hymn of those soldiers to help them get through the dark nights of Christmas time in wartime. So yeah, fascinating song. We have one we don't know where it came from, one that the dude's best friend changed it without his permission, and now this one brought to you by the Unitarian Church. Thank you, Unitarians. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening to this episode and continue to go with me on this journey through the birth of Jesus. Be back next week to wrap up the last little bit here when the shepherds now go to the manger, but got one more episode right after that as well, going into the new year with Hymns of Christmas. And it's actually going to be an episode that there's not a sermon for. There's one more thing I want to talk about here when it comes to this journey through the birth of Jesus. One more very important element of the Christmas story that keeps coming back up that our hymns often talk about. So got two more episodes here for you as we continue through the birth of Jesus. But thank you for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet already, please rate and review this show wherever you get your podcasts, and pass this episode along to a friend if you have a friend who loves any of these songs. If you know somebody who doesn't like Hillsong, Bethel, or Elevation, pass this episode along to them that they might get a little Christmas cheer out of it, or conviction. You can also support the show financially if you would like to by heading on over to buymeacoffee.com/MSLpod. You can leave a one-time donation or join one of our monthly support tiers. There's also a link in the description for our shop. Got some things brewing for the new year, especially when it comes to that YouTube channel that I'm continuing to work on. Got something going. Got a direction now for the YouTube channel. More on that coming. And if you want some more Christmas cheer in your life, I invite you to check out my other podcast, Kung Fu Pizza Party, where me and my wife Claire sit down to review A Karate Christmas Miracle. And yes, the movie is as bad as that name is. It's a great time, about as long as this episode as well. So if you got the time, check it out. But until next time, this is Brandon signing off, reminding you as always that theology is for everyone, so keep on studying.